We're a little bit late. Good morning. It's cold, so I'm moving slow. I don't like the cold. I saw a thing online this week that said there is nothing more dramatic than a cold Texan. And that's the truth, because I'm whiny and grumpy. No, I have no desire to be in 21 degrees. Nope. That's why I live in Texas. If I wanted to be cold, I'd live in one of those places. I don't want to be cold. It's ridiculous, yes. I know, I lived there for a while, and that's ridiculous too. Well, good morning, everybody. We're about to get started. We're digging in and walking through Matthew as we have been forever. Matthew chapter 12 is where we are this morning. We have been camped out there for a little bit, and there was a lot of things going on in chapter 12. There was a couple of healings, and then we moved down into some people questioning Jesus, accusing him of casting out demons by the power of the devil. And then he went through and started telling them a few things and basically making this point that he's creating a new kingdom. That this is a new thing. This is different. This is a new people. And it's different than everything that they've ever known, which is going to lead us into where we are this morning, because this is one of those passages that is weird. And we look at it and we go, wait, what? So Matthew chapter 12, starting at verse 46. While Jesus was still talking to the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside wanting to speak to him. Someone told him, "Your mother and brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to you." He replied to him, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" Pointing to his disciples, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." And we read that and we go, wait, Jesus is disrespecting his mama? That's not right. But let's unpack this a little bit, because I think it makes a lot more sense when we look at it in the context of Matthew chapter 12. And remember everything that we just talked about. There's a lot going on here. There's the accusations, and then he's talking to the Pharisees, and he's giving them all this stuff, and he's illustrating this point that I'm creating a new kingdom. I'm creating a new people, and it's different than what you've had before. That even applies to family. We have no evidence that before the resurrection, Jesus' family were believers or even followers. And that's understandable. I mean, isn't it? I mean, I'm going to be honest with y'all. If I get wind that my brother has decided he's the Messiah, I'm going to be like Jesus' mother and brothers. I'm going to be outside waiting to, put him in one of those shirts that ties in the back, because there's something going on there. You're crazy. And I think that's what happens. If you look at Mark's version of this same account, just hold your finger in Matthew, flip over to Mark chapter 3, verse 20. "And he," being Jesus, "came home, and the crowd gathered again to such an extent that they could not even eat a meal. When his own people heard of this, they went out to take custody of him, for they were saying, 'He's lost his senses.' The scribes who came down from Jerusalem were saying, 'He is possessed by Beelzebul, and he casts out demons by the ruler of the demons.'" That gives us context. This is the same account. This is the same incident, right? Because we just had the whole he casts out demons by the power of Beelzebul, and now his family show up to talk to him in Matthew's version. Mark's version, they come to take custody of him because he's out of his mind. And like I said, if your sibling or even your child started saying they were the Son of God, you would be a little bit concerned, right? It would not be something that you just go, "Oh yeah, he must be, yeah. I remember when he used to walk on the water in the bathtub." No. That and so we got to cut them some slack. From later New Testament writings, we get the idea that his family got on board and figured it out. But at this point, they aren't coming to chit-chat or to gossip about Aunt Lou. They're coming to take custody of him because he's crazy. And Jesus replies, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" Pointing to his disciples, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." So Jesus, go ahead, Cody. We are all God's children. We are all part of the family of believers. That's where he's going. Absolutely. He's been healing. He's been accused of being the devil. Then he's asked for a sign, and he says, "I'm not going to give you a sign except the sign of Jonah," which is the burial and resurrection that you're going to figure out later. The Gentiles are going to get it even if you don't, and the Gentiles are going to stand up and accuse you. And your final state, the story he just got through telling before this, when you're left without anything to hold on to, is going to be worse than you were before we even started out. I'm creating a new kingdom, a new family. And my old family doesn't get it any more than you do, than my old people, the Jews. I don't expect you to get it. The family that follows me, that listens to my teaching, that comes to me instead of demanding I come out to them. You see that? I mean, they're not there saying, "Hey, we want to follow you. We want to come in and be a part of what's going on." They're standing outside demanding he come out to them. And so this is going to be my family. Miss Pat, you had your hand up.
His mother should have known better.
And I'm sure she did. Right.
Why is he any different? And they didn't, maybe not seen a difference in him as a child.
Right.
Because there's no evidence from our canon that he did miracles as a child.
Right.
And so maybe they just brought her with them.
Maybe they brought her with them. I mean, again, it's okay if you have some doubts. I mean, we just a few chapters before had John the Baptist doubting. Who heard the very audible voice of God when he baptized him. And so, you know, Mary at some point going, "Okay, did that really mean what I thought it meant? When when the weird people showed up and gave him presents, did that really mean what I thought it meant, or was I wrong about all this stuff?" You know what I mean? I mean, it's human nature that at some point we start going, "Nah, I'm not sure." Cody? Yeah. Until you're following, when you're a follower of Jesus. And this goes back into the demanding things of Jesus. You know, he just got through. Now, look at the way Matthew sets it up, or the Holy Spirit sets it up through Matthew. But they just got through demanding a sign, you know. Give us a sign. Give us something to prove you are who you say you are. Now his family shows up, and they say, "Look, we need you to come out here and talk to us privately because we need some proof that you are who you say you are." There's still a demand there. It's still a "Hey, come do what we want you to do." Now, here's my question. Do we demand a sign today? Do we demand that Jesus come out to us and behave like we want him to behave? How? How do we demand a sign today? How do we demand that Jesus come out and behave like we want him to behave? Okay, praying. Absolutely. "Jesus, if you get me out of this, then I promise I will never do this again," which is hilarious because he knows that I'm full of it, that I'm going to do it again. Even in that moment when I'm saying I won't. You know, but yeah, absolutely. Or we pray, if you're really up there, you see this in movies a lot. You know, the character that goes and sits in the chapel at the hospital and goes, "Well, I don't know if you're real or not, but if you are real, then go ahead and heal my father and prove to me that you're real." That's the same thing. We're demanding a sign. Show me. Show me. Prove to me that you are what you say you are. And I think we get the same answer that the Pharisees got. You're going to get the sign of Jonah. You're going to get the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, and that ought to be all the sign that you need.
But sometimes he is so good to us
Mm,
that he gives us the blessing that we are asking for and shows us that he loves us. I mean, we don't deserve it,
absolutely.
but he'll do it.
Absolutely. And we're going to get there in just a second, because we also demand that Jesus fit into our boxes. Right? We don't like Jesus who doesn't agree with what we think he should agree with. And there's lots of examples of that. I'm struggling to pull one out of my head right now, but there's lots of examples of we want Jesus to say one thing, and I'll tell you what, we like sorry, I've just pulled that out of my ear. We like conservative Republican Jesus until he turns around and says, sell everything you have and give it away to the poor. Well, that sounds like socialism, Jesus. You're not supposed to do that. That doesn't fit in our Jesus box. You're going somewhere you're not supposed to go. And Jesus is always going to be outside of the box because he's Jesus. And there's their boxes, our boxes. Jesus is like, I can't be contained in your little framework. I'm not going to fit neatly into what you want me to be. I'm going to be me. I am who I am. That's what God says throughout the Bible. And there's nothing you can do about it. And that's part of faith, when we get to a point where we can trust God even when he doesn't act like we think he should act. Right? We want the take away all our problems Jesus. Right? That's preached a lot in churches. If you just become a Christian, then your whole life's going to be better and everything's going to be wonderful. The problem with that is it's not biblical. Jesus says, I didn't come to bring peace but a sword. Jesus says, I came to turn father against child. Jesus says, don't be surprised when the world hates you because of me. And in this world you'll have tribulation. Over and over and over, he says, don't expect that it's going to be all sunshine and roses, because it's not. In fact, it's going to be harder when you follow me than it is when you don't follow me. We want Jesus to be our boyfriend. That's a lot of churches nowadays. We sing the Jesus is my boyfriend song, and I love you, Jesus, and there's nothing wrong with that, but Jesus as my boyfriend still doesn't go all the way, because my boyfriend doesn't say, I want you to die so that you can follow me. Well, I hope he doesn't. If he does, you need to find a new boyfriend. But that's a little bit further than we intended to go on the second date. I'm not gonna pick up my cross for you. Or now we picked on the conservatives. I'll pick on the other side now, because we want Jesus to be this social warrior, culture warrior Jesus, that brings justice and all this stuff. We want him to stand with our political agenda, whichever political agenda we have. And the problem is that he confounds everything. He tells the rich to sell everything, and then he tells the liberal that he came to fulfill the law, not to abolish it. And so we stand outside and tell him to come out and act right, but Jesus is not going to do that. He says, you're going to follow me. I'm not going to follow you. And I think that's part of the point here. I'm not going to come out to you. If you come in to me, you can be my mother and my brother and my sister. But I'm not going to come out away from this to you because you think I should. Cody?
A lot of people these days, they think they love him. They actually lust the thought of Jesus. They're not like when they have to come out and do something they don't want to do, say forgive somebody they really hate. Mm-hmm. That's the part like, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
It's time for me to step back a little bit. I went to church on Sunday though, so they made up for it, right?
Right. I call that cafeteria style religion. You remember Luby's cafeteria or Furr's cafeteria, the cafeterias we used to have? They don't have them anymore, I don't think, but I think there's a few still around. But for the most part, you don't see them. But you'd take your tray and you'd go through the line and you'd go, I want a little bit of that. I want a little bit. Oh, no, I don't want any of that. I want a little bit of that. That's kind of how we go through Scripture, you know. I want a little bit of that, and oh, no, I don't want that. I'll take a little bit of that, and, you know, and that's exactly what you're talking about. We want to go through and take what we want and leave the rest, and Jesus says it's not going to work that way. But that's the difference between disciples and Pharisees. Pharisees want to use the law to control other people. Disciples want to follow Jesus regardless of the cost. And disciples follow where Jesus leads, while Pharisees demand a sign that fits into their own preconceived notions. Okay, so turn the page. We move into chapter 13. And chapter 13, he's going to tell a whole bunch of parables. He's going to tell 7 different parables, and it kind of feels like it's stopping the momentum of the story, but it actually is not. It's going to catalog some diverse responses, some different explanations. It's going to illustrate how this new kingdom that he's creating is going to work. And it's not going to work like things normally work. Let's just read a little bit. Chapter 13, we'll start at verse 1. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. And so Jesus is going to start speaking in parables, and this confounds the disciples a little bit because this is not what we want. You're telling us stories when we want a checklist. You know, I want to. It goes back to what Cody was just saying. I want to be able to go through and say, well, I went to church and I said my prayer and I read my scripture, and so I'm good. You know, I've done this, and this. I've checked them all off my list. And that's not the way Jesus works. Jesus starts telling stories, and that confuses them. And it's sort of, this story in particular is such an amazing story that it's been told and preached and studied, and we've all heard all kind of different lessons out of this story. And so it's hard to look at it fresh without all of our preconceived notions. But there are a lot of things in there. The word parable is going to occur 12 times in chapter 13. It really derives from a Greek word that means to throw alongside. So he's basically throwing an earthly story alongside this idea of the kingdom so that you can see the similarities. Does that make sense? It's kind of like, because every one of these, he's got, the kingdom is like, the kingdom is like, the kingdom is like. And it's not exactly, but here's a good illustration. It's something that you can compare it to. The parable of the sower is going to set the stage for all the other parables that will follow. And it presents the scenario where the sower sows the seeds which fall into the 4 types of ground. and each type of ground has different consequences. I'm looking at some of my notes, but there are some commentators that say the parable of the sower is kind of the touchstone of all the parables, because it is kind of what all the rest of them hearken back to. And so and this is one of the only ones that Jesus interprets, right? Because the disciples are going to come back to him and go, what does that mean? I don't get it. You told us a story about seed and sowing and soils and stuff. And what are you talking about? And this is one of the only ones that Jesus unpacks a little bit for them. Jesus himself calls the story the parable of the sower. Now that's important because most of the time we hear this preached as being more about soils, you know, that there's this kind of person and this kind of person and this kind of person and which one are you, right? And I'm not saying that's wrong. I think one of the reasons Jesus uses parables is because we can get a lot of different things out of them from different directions. But he himself calls this the parable of the sower. What does that teach us about this parable? What is Jesus referring to it by that title as the parable of the sower? What does that teach us? What is the point then of this parable? Jared?
If you ever done a garden, it takes preparation.
Okay.
To get it ready. If it's plowed, you got to get rid of the weeds. That's what it's all about. You're comparing it to a garden. You got to prepare it.
Jerry said, for those of you at home, if you've ever planted a garden, you have to prepare it. You have to pull the weeds. You have to till the soil. You have to get it ready to receive whatever. So I buy that. But Jesus says the parable of the sower. What is the sower? What is special about that, Kara? Even the best farmer can't make something grow if the soil's not right. And I mean, there are probably some of you who, especially in this congregation, we have professors of agricultural science, and so y'all understand that a lot better than I do. Cody?
That last verse, verse 9, whoever has ears, let them hear. He's speaking into in a different tone right here, saying, hey, I want you to follow me, and if you come with me, I will show you greater things. Because even in verse 8, it said, where it produces a crop, 160 or 30 times was grown on the soil.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, I think it's the secret of the knowledge of Christ.
The knowledge of what's trying to happen. But the sower here, he's not really a good farmer. Is he? I mean, he just goes out and starts throwing seed willy-nilly. Now, I hadn't done a whole lot of planting, but what I've done, I know that's not the way we ever did it. My grandpa had a big plot of garden. You know, he came up during the Great Depression, and so he had a great big garden area behind his house, and he grew potatoes and peas and corn and okra and all this kind of stuff, and so that's where I learned to drive, was on a Farmall Cub, and you know and that's how we learned all that stuff. But when you're doing it, you don't just go out there and just chunk it. Danny? I'm coming, Jason.
I heard something along that line one time. Being Christian and disciple, you don't have to be good at it.
Ooh,
You just have to know where to get the seed.
very good. Being a Christian and a disciple, I'm restating this for the folks at home, you don't have to be good at it. You just got to know where to get the seed. I like that. That's excellent. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to preach that one day. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if this pertains to it or not, but when I was a kid, my father had a nice garden in the backyard. We had all kinds of vegetables and other plants and stuff. But in some of the seeds, you would just
Right.
and they would grow. Other seeds you had to actually plant. And then other seeds still that you would germinate and get them sprouted and then plant them.
Right.
So I don't know if that.
No, it does. It does, because there's something to this that he just goes out. He just goes out throwing things everywhere. And who is the sower in this passage? Well, is it Jesus or is it God? I think God is the sower. I think Jesus is the Word, and the Word of God made flesh is the seed. And the seed comes to earth, and how it's accepted, right? I mean, he just got through going through this whole thing about how these people, some of them look at him and see the Son of Man, some of them look at him and see the devil. And so why do some people accept Jesus and why do some people don't? And this story is instructive to that. Why do some people hear the word and it grows and flourishes, while other people, nothing happens? And I think there's something here, because the idea that God is the sower, God sows the word, the logos, everywhere, and the four types of soil are more so than individual hearts, are really conditions of life. If you think about conditions of life, Jesus has already been sown everywhere in the world. He didn't just put him in a certain place, right? There's not just the word's made flesh, the word comes out to the world, and it's just sown everywhere. Good soil, bad soil, among rocks, among thorns, it doesn't matter. The conditions of life, right? Some of us, our life is such that it's hard. And the soil can't take root in that, and then others, there's all kind of things choking it out, right? And maybe others, there's a little bit of soil, but there's rocks and stuff, and then the bird. Jesus is going to say, what is Jesus going to say the bird is? Do you remember that? We'll get there in just a second. But Jesus says the bird is Satan, and he's going to come up and take the seed off and try to keep it from taking root. And so the story is fairly shocking to the listeners, because many of those in that day and age did not think God had sown seed of the word everywhere in the world. It just went to them. God had sown the word only in Israel, and that's not the picture that's given here. There's also a lot of things that this is not our idea of how a divine operation ought to run. You know, that our illustration of the kingdom would be more like a giant nail, you know, that's being pounded into the world, and you're going to take it no matter what. And the seed is a little bit the seed's a little bit too passive, right? I mean, it's just there. It does its work out of sight. There's nothing flashy or dramatic about it. That's not what we would prefer. But in every case, the seed, which is the word, springs up. Even in the rocky soil, even among the thorns, it springs up. Well, the birds catch it and carry it off, right? But have you ever seen a tree or something growing in a weird place where it doesn't belong? You know, like, and my grandpa, we would be out, and I remember there was this one field ditch and there was a tree growing right there, and it was like no trees around it for miles, and it wasn't like it had been clear cut. It was just random. And I'm like, how does a tree get there? I'm a kid. He said, birds. Birds carried that seed out and they dropped it and it sprung up. Well, that makes sense to me. And so even the birds, the seed still takes roots. Now, again, we are told in our translations that the birds are created with the evil one. That's a rough translation. If Matthew had intended the devil, he would have used diabolos. He does not use that. He uses a word that is more aptly translated hardship or troubles. So now it changes things. It's not like Satan's crouching outside ready to steal Jesus and run off with him. It's more like the struggles of my life steal Jesus, take the word, and hide it from me.
Well, that comes along later in the parable, the troubles of the world.
The troubles of the world, absolutely. The
Not the act, but which one? The ones with no root.
Yeah.
Rocky.
the troubles of the world. It's about the conditions of life. That's good for us. That's encouraging, because otherwise you go, well, if I'm good soil, that's great. But what if I'm rocky soil? Because rocky soil can't change what it is. Apart from that farmer getting in here and pulling the rocks out, that soil can't change itself. So if it's not my heart, but rather the conditions of life, I at least have some hope there. Cody, what were you going to say?
This is basically teaching us how much work are you willing to put in to God. The more work you put in, the more fertile your soil is going to be.
The more fertile your soil is going to be. But again, the soil can't make itself fertile.
Right, you do.
Well, no, I cannot make myself fertile. The soil can't change what it is, apart from some outside influence, right? The rocky soil can't move the rocks out. The thorny soil can't pull the weeds. You know what I'm saying? There has to be an outside influence. And so, yes, it is about how fertile and open I am. But I got to have help.
Right.
I got to have help. Jason?
I'm thinking that outside influence you talk about is the light.
Okay. The light. The outside influence is the light. Unpack that a little bit more.
Well, you got to have sunlight for things to grow.
Absolutely.
And so that correlates with the light of Jesus.
The light of Jesus.
And that's what I'm thinking in my heart.
I like that the light is significant. The word logos appears 6 times in this story. And you know from John's gospel that logos, word, is directly correlated with Jesus. And
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
Where does the logos appear?
It's 18 through 23, and I can go through it. I don't have it pulled up in front of me.
Like message?
Yes, most of those that are translated. Hang on, I'll pull it up. No, I'm cool. I just gotta.
Word several times.
Hang on, I'm coming. You know, my paper Bible, I just open it. I don't have to punch all these buttons. And then you got big old fat fingers, little bitty buttons. And then I'm still not where I need to be. If you go, really it's on down at the explanation, 18 through 23. When anyone hears the message word about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches it away. Now remember, we said that's not evil one as much as it is struggles. So the I'll have to go through with the Greek and parse it out. I'll get you the specifics next time, okay? Because I'm going to waste everybody else's time. But there's the seed is the seed is so passive. It seems like we would like something a little bit more direct. The human conditions We all endure times when we're rocky or when we're hard. Yeah? Does fertilizer fit into this? That's good. Somebody want to? I'm interested. I can entertain that idea. Why is soil fertile? Because it has the minerals and the stuff that it needs. So, how does fertilizer fit into that? Okay, Kara.
Well, I guess I was already thinking about this is what can we do to help soil that's not in a good position. And I was thinking about just like when you have physical needs that aren't met, it's very hard for them to be receptive to their spiritual needs. Obviously, we know the spiritual is more important, but if they're hungry,
Right.
they might not be in a place where they could listen. So feed them, and then the soil is a little bit more receptive to receiving how Jesus would heal someone's physical ailments and then forgive their sins. We know that forgiveness is more important. They needed their soil was more receptive after the physical needs were met.
And I think that ties into what Cody's been saying. I can't help me, but you know what? I can be, as a believer, as a church, I can come alongside in your life and help to remove those rocks. I can come alongside in your life. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't going to say this, so we may need to turn the tape off because I'm going to be a little crass. But to Gail's point, I think how we use the crap that we deal with in life, we're talking about fertilizer. We all have it, but do we use that as fuel for my soil, or is it just, I know I'm stretching. Go ahead, Cody.
Following on what you're saying, the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. So, like you're saying, is we have to help one another, because that says it in Scripture that we are to come together. Twos are always better than one. When one falls, we must pick another one up.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's what it's all about to me.
Absolutely. And the goal of all the soils is what? Bearing fruit. So what does that look like? What does it mean to bear fruit? Jesus explains what each element means, and that different ones mean different things. What does it mean to bear fruit? What does that look like? Well, anybody? Nobody's going to jump on that?
We can refer to the fruits of the Spirit.
Absolutely. Paul tells us what fruits look like.
Yeah.
Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control.
If we have good soil and the Holy Spirit can work on that soil, we should bear those fruits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you see those fruits coming forth, then maybe there's something to that. Now, what I find remarkable is later on, Jesus, after telling them parable after parable after parable after parable, is going to turn to the disciples and go, "Do you understand this? Are you getting it?" And they don't. They confidently say, "Yes, sir, we got it. Yes, we understand." And they don't have a clue. And they desert Jesus almost immediately to save their own skins. And we see that they don't really get it. But here's why I think that's helpful. Because as a disciple, as one who's following Jesus, I don't get it half the time, And I'm messing up or I'm failing. And Jesus does not desert these disciples. He doesn't kick them to the curb just because they don't know what they're doing. He doesn't say, you guys are worthless. And I think that's I think that's at least encouraging to me, that even though they're not bearing fruit in the moment, Jesus is continuing to invest in them, right? Peter, that he calls the rock, is the most shaky of all of them. And you see that he messes up and he's going to deny him but he doesn't give up on him. even after they've deserted him and denied him and all that stuff, he still, after he's resurrected, he still comes back to them. He doesn't quit on them just because they failed. So there is the extravagant sowing is significant. The soils are significant. The idea of the heart is important because, you know, we're talking about the different types of hearts, but their understanding of heart is different than our understanding of heart. We use heart like Hallmark Christmas movie kind of heart, and that's not what he's talking about. Their idea of heart was the heart was really the gut. And that wasn't the organ that pumped blood to the body. It was the center of where you made decisions and how you figured things out. And it was more your, what we would call conscience and things like that. And so it wasn't all about, you know, romantic lovey-dovey. It was something else. And I think that's significant. Brendan? Right. He did not desert you when you got sick. He did not desert us when we mess up. You know, well, running out of time. I'm supposed to be stopping right
I think verse 20 and 21 speaks very loud, I think, to this day and age.
now.
The seed falling on rocky ground, the first is someone who hears the word at once and receives it with joy. But since they have no root, it lasts only a short time. You know, that's a lot of people who go to church on Sundays, and then, you know, a lot of churches, they preach things that'll make you feel good.
Right.
And get you all pumped up on the Jesus train, and then as soon as you leave, you know, someone, you know, throws a big bucket of water and then watches that pretty fire away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to come back to this next week because we barely got through the end of the actual story itself. But I want you to be thinking about this week, verse 9. He who has ears, let him hear. The one who has ears, let that one hear. And the thought I want you to play with in your mind this week as we come back next week is, what does it mean to hear spiritually? How do I hear spiritually? That's what I'm going to leave with you. That's your homework. So we will come back together next week. You got about 15 minutes, and we will be back in here for worship.